On the 8th of December 1542, a baby girl was born. 6 days later, her dad died. Quite a week. In fact, it was a week that changed the direction in not only Scottish, but British history. I'd venture to suggest it changed the history of the world. But to understand why, I need to take you to York. If you're interested in the people, places and events in Scottish history, then click the subscribe button at the bottom right of the screen. And if you enjoyed this video, then give it a thumbs up, share it, and watch the next one. In the meantime, let me tell you a story. I hesitate to think about the ink spent discussing the wisdom, cunning, tragedy, helplessness or culpability of Mary, Queen of Scots in her adult life. Yet as a child, Mary was born into a crisis. But she didn't cause that crisis. She inherited it. If you watch this channel, then you probably know that Mary, Queen of Scots was born 6 days before her dad, James V, died. It sounds like a ho-hum factoid. But that fact, along with the death and survival of James's male heirs, legitimate and illegitimate, the religious and political context of Britain and wider Europe at the time, and 2 queens on British thrones, created a series of consequences for British, European, transatlantic and indeed global geopolitics right up until the present day. That was quite a week in history. But if Mary's birth and James's death were the kindling for this global fire, the spark was a meeting scheduled in York in September 1541. Henry VIII had been really pally with the Pope for a while. But in the 1530s, Henry split with the Roman Church because, well, why shouldn't kings marry who they wanted? You ain't the boss of me. That left Henry a bit isolated in largely Catholic Europe. He'd already had fallouts with France. In fact, 20 years before, Henry's invasion of Scotland's old allies, the French, made it necessary for Scotland to invade the north of England. That led to the disaster of the Battle of Flodden, where James's dad, James IV, was the last British monarch to die in battle. The dead king's wife, Henry's sister, watched and waited day after day from her tower in Linlithgow Palace for a husband that never returned. James V, the current king, was a baby when Henry's forces killed his dad at Flodden. Now he's an adult. Scotland has renewed its alliance with France, and we still look to Rome to supply us with wine and communion wafers. So, you can imagine how conflicted James is when his uncle Henry VIII pressured them to change both Scotland's religious faith and centuries-old political allegiances. I'm your uncle. And have you any idea how much cash you can make by sacking the monasteries? James steadfastly refused his uncle's arguments. Throughout the 1530s, there were hints of a face-to-face meeting to ease tensions. Henry was convinced that if his young nephew met him personally, Henry's sparkling personality would bring James round to the English way of thinking. James said, "Get your people to talk to my people. We'll maybe do lunch." Polite gestures about someday were made. And in the background, James's mum, Margaret Tudor, tried to reconcile her Scottish son and her English brother. But there were always political obstacles. Little things. Like the Pope had excommunicated Henry and wanted Catholic powers to take action against him. James positioned himself as a champion of Catholic interests in Britain. And as Henry VIII had become Europe's most notorious apostate, Add in French squabbles with the Habsburgs on the European mainland, and there was a messy entanglement of national and religious allegiances across Europe, where the major powers all ranged against each other, and James trying to walk a narrow line with our wee country of Scotland. Of course, all the religious, personal and power politics that played out across Europe were repeated on a smaller scale within Scotland itself. Tricky. In this context, James had to make a huge decision. You see, Uncle Henry was now adamant about meeting up in York. Just before we arrive in York, can I remind you that I'm on the last leg of touring my live show, Scotland Made the World. If you live in Mull, Iona, Dundee, Bathgate, Hawick, Kirkcaldy, Edinburgh, Stirling, or any province in Canada, then I'll be bringing my unique combination of Scottish comedy and history to you this summer. Click the link top right or in the description below, or go to www.brucefummey.co.uk for dates and tickets. I'll see you there. Now, York's such a beautiful city, anyone would take your arm off for an invitation to come here. But the Scottish King was cautious. What was he getting himself into? A family meet-up? A chance to avoid war? Or a trap? Just in case you don't think this was a difficult decision for James, let me give you a wee bit more information about what was happening in the run-up to this suggested 1541 meeting. You see, Henry had suggested a meeting before. Now, James was happy in principle for a meeting, but coming to York, he had reservations. I've got reservations. A kicker, the Pope had forbidden him to travel to England. Now, a previous Pope, who was pally with Henry VIII, had forbidden James's dad, James IV, from going to England. When James IV crossed the border, he was automatically excommunicated. The English recovered his body from the Flodden battlefield, but they left it unburied because the Pope refused burial on holy ground. His body lay for so long that people forgot who he was, and workmen in a monastery in Surrey used his head as a football. If that happened to your dad, it might make you think twice. Coming down to Henry's northern capital posed other problems. There would automatically be a status difference between the two. With Henry as host, James looks subservient. Not only that, it would be in the very location where William I of Scotland had accepted Scotland's subjugation to a previous English king, Henry II. Also, James had married two French brides. First, Madeleine de Valois, the French king's daughter, and then, when she died, Marie de Guise, who Henry himself had proposed to. Marie famously knocked Henry back, saying that she thought her neck was too small for such a marriage. Leave aside that personal slight, the pro-French diplomacy was a snub in itself. But there was more. James had two sons, but as negotiations continued, they both died on the same day. James didn't want to go south to England without a legitimate heir. When his ancestor Alexander III died without an heir, Edward Longshanks had seen that vacuum as an opportunity to take the Scottish crown to himself. Was Henry VIII any more trustworthy? Scottish envoys tried to set a condition that James would only come if Mary of Guise first gave birth to another child to secure the succession. Henry flatly rejected. So James had loads of reasons not to risk going down to meet Henry. As a compromise, he suggested a meeting at the border. But that wasn't enough for the haughty king, who was the first English king that required people to call him Your Highness. Henry expected James to meet him in York. So the stage was set for this dramatic encounter. By autumn 1541, no final agreement had been reached, but Henry had other reasons for a grand royal progress to York. There had been a recent rebellion in the north. Making his presence felt and meeting his nephew James at the same time was a fantastic opportunity for Henry to kill two birds. He went out of his way to prepare a splendid welcome of pomp and ceremony. He even shipped his finest tapestries and furnishings to decorate the meeting halls. This was going to be a majestic display of Tudor power and a chance to overawe James. His seniority and charisma would sway the younger Scottish king. He'd resolve lingering disputes, end thorny diplomatic grievances, and the border reaving. James would make political concessions. He'd join Henry in rejecting papal authority and distance Scotland from its French alliance. The symbology of meeting in England was perfect for Henry. It'd bolster his flagging prestige in Europe. In mid-September, accompanied by his fifth wife, young Catherine Howard, and a large entourage, Henry VIII entered York in royal pomp. This was his first visit since the Northern Rebellion. It was a statement. Royal authority returned. And shortly, victory would be reinforced with the visit of a lesser king who would also comply with Henry's terms. This was as far north as Henry had ever travelled, showing just how important this was to him. Henry held court, expecting to welcome James V at any moment. A few days passed, which were filled with feasts, pageantry and power, designed to awe the Scots. When they arrived, a few more days passed. I'm a bit full with this feasting, Charles. What about you? Stop whining and eat another partridge, Simon. We need to be eating partridge when the jocks arrive. Another few days passed. Has anyone got any Gaviscon? For over a week, Henry waited in York. As each day passed, it became obvious that Henry VIII had been stood up by his nephew. 9 days publicly preparing to receive the King of Scots with all honours. But just as his sister had vainly waited for her husband after the Battle of Flodden, Henry's waiting was pointless now. James wasn't coming. Henry was furious. This deliberate snub was proof that Scotland was firmly allied to France and Catholicism. It was provocation for war. What's more, it was a personal humiliation by his nephew, who should know he was a lesser monarch. The only thing that could make Henry angrier is if the wife he'd brought north in royal procession was found to be sleeping with one of his courtiers. What? You're joking. Right, that's it. If James won't come to me, I'll go to James by force of arms. That was Henry saying that, not me. Anglo-Scottish relations quickly deteriorated into open hostilities. Henry started war preparations and continued strengthening garrisons in the north through to 1542. He also declared war on France. That meant that under the Old Alliance, Scotland was obligated to attack England in support of France. Again. Even without the treaty, James V couldn't have let English aggression go. Skirmishes flared across the border, raids and counter-raids as both sides ratcheted up the tension. In late summer 1542, the Duke of Norfolk led a big English army to pillage the Scottish borders. It was brief, but brutal. When Scottish forces mustered in response, Norfolk retreated back across the Tweed. James rallied his nobles for a counter-invasion of England. They had some success at the Battle of Haddon Rig. So in an effort to avoid all-out war, Scottish ambassadors in London proposed that Henry and James could meet in person, but only after the now pregnant Marie de Guise had given birth. Henry wasn't prepared to wait, and fighting continued. On the 24th of November 1542, the two sides met at the Battle of Solway Moss. James was ill, or maybe he just remembered his father's fate crossing the border with the Scottish army. Either way, he stayed at Lochmaben rather than lead the army himself. It was a disaster for Scotland. James's army fell into disarray. One chronicle said that hardly anyone was killed at Solway Moss, but the Scottish defeat was total. English forces captured Scottish artillery and even King James's banner. 1,200 Scots were taken prisoner. This was a huge setback to James, a deep and personal humiliation. Now, maybe James was ill after all, because after he retreated to Linlithgow to visit his pregnant wife, he continued on to Fulton Palace, where he took to bed with a fever, compounded, it was said, by a broken heart. On December the 8th, 1542, Queen Mary of Guise delivered the long-awaited baby, but not the male heir James had prayed for. It was a girl who would also be called Mary. When bedridden James V got the news, he fell into despair. The Stuart dynasty started when the dying Marjorie Bruce delivered a son who would succeed her childless brother David. As James anticipated his own death at the birth of a daughter, he famously said, "It came in with a lass, it gangs out with a lass." 6 days later, he was indeed dead. And the baby, Mary, was now the new Queen of Scots. English invasion would continue as this queen was used as a pawn. So much ink's been spilled, documentaries filmed, podcasts recorded, YouTube videos made about Mary, Queen of Scots at the end of her life. It's easy to forget the maelstrom into which she was born. She didn't create the crisis, she inherited it. We can never tell how things might have been different if James and Henry had met. We do know what did follow: the death of Scotland's Catholic king, more English invasion, Mary's exile to France, Scottish Reformation, Mary's return, the unification of Tudor and Stuart in her second marriage, the union of the crowns, Pilgrim Fathers, the establishment of Jamestown across the Atlantic, British Empire, and more. All following on from a meeting here in York that never even happened. It's just one more way that Scotland's story was made in York. I've made another video about how events in York impacted Scotland, and the link to that's coming up on screen now. If you like this video, then hype it, share it, and watch the next one. Support the channel by clicking top right to become a Patreon member, or buy me a coffee in the description below. In the meantime, ha mi an dóchas gwn bí lamá. Chéirí an drasta.